Yes, Mariah Keki. It's two.
So welcome. And if you want to introduce yourself and tell us who you are, where you're from.
Yes, absolutely. I'd love to. Thank you for making the time. I know you all are very busy. Sorry, I'm going to try to not be distracted by the computer while giving you at least some pretty pictures. So I am the co-vice chair of the Trails and Greenways Council with RJ. He's the other co-vice chair with me. And I've been on the Trails and Greenways Council for 9 years. And more than what brings me to the council, like who I am, as much as I can say I'm anything, as we identify as anything, is I'm a trail builder. I'm a trail planner, a designer now. I've been doing this work for 27 years. I set my first rock in the ground as a stepstone at Little Rock Pond, which is just up the road from Kelly Stand that we were chatting about. And I did that, and 27 years later, I'm sitting in the room talking with you and having an entire career based off of starting that, right? So be careful what your first job is. So in my current role, where I've landed is, so I worked I started out that first year when I was 15 as an intern through the Forest Service, through a program that doesn't exist anymore. That led to being on professional trail crews for nonprofits, like some of the nonprofits that we've heard from today. Traveled across the country, worked for state, federal lands, and then came back to Vermont, worked for the Appalachian Mountain Club for 4 or 5 years managing their trails, and then actually finally gave in to requests from a couple of people I had gotten to go into the private sector of trails in the trail industry. And so I've been with our business, Sinuosity, for also 9 years. I think it's 9 years, maybe 10 years now. And we are proud members of the Professional Trail Builders Association, PTBA as we call it. And we were initiated in, there's a whole vetting and application process we became members in 2013. And so, so basically my voice for you here today is to answer any questions about this weird thing that I do and trying to explain a little bit more about, we've heard a lot about the organizational level of what's going on, but what this looks like, and that analogy of like boots on the ground, tires on the ground and whatnot, and what the actual work is that we're talking about when we're talking about supporting the resource and stewardship. Because that's the part that I do, and that all these organizations do, and they facilitate happening with hundreds or thousands of volunteers being that real base that this is built on. And just a couple other things sort of about volunteerism. I've been on the council, like I said, for 9 years. The idea of finally having a staff person that we need so much, this being in the forefront is so key. It's been a long haul because so much needs to be done, and it needs to be done now. As you know, our landscape is changing, and it's changing quickly. And with increase in trail use, we're really at this pivotal point that trails need to have this voice. And the beauty of the council that is different than these individual organizations, and why I'm on it and love it, is that it brings trail-based recreation together in a unified voice, right? So we're not talking about skiers, we're not talking about mountain bikers, we are talking about trail-based recreation for all people. And that's sort of that idea and that lens that we're going for that feeds into H85 as well. So that's a little bit about, like I said, I get distracted by the computer. So I almost didn't give you pretty pictures, but bear with me here, folks. Responding as
we have access to this.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah. Awesome. So,
yeah, we do, if that helps. So we can also,
yeah, it's just not advancing for me. I'm not.
Alara, our resident genius.
So let me just try it this way if I have to.
there you go.
Okay, we'll just do it this way. I do not need to waste your time. And technology glitches, we have enough. So basically, I'm really excited about the idea that H131 is out there. As you've heard from a lot of folks, we need to support the stewardship. When it comes to trail building itself, computer's being slow today. This is sort of a guideline that we go for. When you're talking about trail building, planning, designing, the whole trail industry, the aim is for sustainable trail practices and experiences, and that being what you generate from balancing these three aspects. And what I think is kind of cool, right? In Vermont, we have VOREC now. And so bringing in that aspect of, people come in and talk about the great economic impacts, the positive economic impacts of trails, but really remembering that it's really all about balancing all of this. And that's how you get something that is a sustainable trail experience, and making sure that we are limiting negative impacts to all of those things by trying to balance all of them together at the same time. And trail stewardship, the goal is that. And so it's interesting when you have folks coming in with all these different perspectives and in terms of one lens of these three, and not quite understanding. We spend a lot of time advocating and educating people on them getting that we're aiming for that middle piece. And that is what we do all the time. And so it's sort of built into the practices of the industry. And obviously in the organizations that we're hearing from today. And this is the way that I think about it, is more about, when I go out and I'm being part of a trail project, the whole goal is to give people a place that they can experience nature without negatively impacting it any more so than they will just by being there, and so all of these things go into that. And so I'll run you through a couple of those things later on, but yeah, so this is sort of like, that's the end of the story and the beginning of the story for most folks in the industry. And so trail builders, what or who are trail builders? So you've heard that there's a lot of, there's hundreds, thousands of volunteers. Think about if you could imagine a map of the state and where you are aware of all the trails being. On average, you should have a drainage of some variety, probably about every 80 feet. That drain should be cleared twice a year, minimum, in terms of just getting the debris out so that way it's not running down the trail and eroding the trail. So you can imagine that if we were actually doing that adequately, how much time that could possibly take. And that's not blowdowns, trees that are blown down that need to be removed in order for people to not walk around them and create, erosion and braiding and trampling all around the sides of the trail. And so when you think about that, like that's just a massive amount of labor that happens every year. At least it needs to be happening. A lot of the time it does happen. And so that's sort of like your base volunteerism, right? And then from there, you have all of the reconstruction and construction work that needs to happen. And so trail builders are anywhere from, people who might call themselves trail builders would be our wonderful, amazing trail adopters doing this base level maintenance work, to nonprofit staff folks like Cindy was talking about, or, the Green Mountain Club has their trail crews, or, next level in terms of tiers of skilled work, then you have our outfit, right? So we're professional trail builders. We have a crew of 6 people on average, and we use, mini excavators, as well as hand tools and whatnot to construct trails and help people plan and design them. And so that was getting ahead of myself. So that's part of what they do. So a little bit more about, I don't know if folks are part of the conversations about the age of that, of the housing stock in Vermont. Mm-hmm. Okay, so think about the age of the housing stock. Well, our trails are kind of like that, right? We have all these legacy trails. When we think about a lot of trail experiences that are out there, they are trails that we have adopted into being. Originally, somebody decided to go on somebody's land, maybe public land, maybe not, and just cut a swath for them to walk through more comfortably, right? And then suddenly that becomes a trail. And maybe they're going up to the top of the mountain to do it, maybe not. And so
Pat, you're